Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irlianna from StarSound Astrology. We are so delighted because Ari Moshe Wolf is back, Heart and Soul Centered Astrology. Hello, welcome back, Ari.
Hey, Irlianna, good to
It's
be
great
here.
to see you again. You always give me such hope and it calms me because we go to such heights. The work that you're doing with evolutionary astrology is just is such a healing balm for the times we're in. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I want to just share with everybody. I don't know if you haven't been to Ari's website, it's arimoshewolf.com. Let me just share you the screen because he's got a very exciting program here. It's a complete training program, and it's really awesome. He's got weekly, you go at your own pace. They're recorded videos, but then you have office hours with Ari. So whatever level you're working at, he will meet you there. So I love that. I think this is brilliant, Ari. Great contribution to the
Thanks so
community.
much.
You can come, people can come and join anytime. There's no set date, right?
That's right, yeah. And the office hours begin in March, so if you join, you'll have some time before that begins as well.
Awesome. So in this video, we're going to cover Pluto through all 12 signs and what that would
Yes.
look like in terms of our soul's evolution. So get ready, grab your paper and pen or thumb, Gen Z. We're going to get into some deep stuff here. Before we do, we're just going to address what's happening right now. So right now we have, as we speak, the sun is conjoined Pluto in a cazimi, which means it's Pluto and the sun are aligned. Pluto is being refined by the fires of the sun. It's getting like cleansed and reprogrammed. And that is going to happen. But what's so interesting is that it's not only happening at this karmic degree, end of an era, but it's also moving into zero Aquarius. So I just wondered if you could just take a few minutes to what that represents for you.
What year did you say was the last year that this happened?
The last time this happened, where the sun was conjunct Pluto at 29 degrees 59 minutes, was 551 AD.
Interesting. I want to find the date, but I recall, if I'm not mistaken, that century was, according to Sri Yukteswar, the the very sort of the apex, like the very bottom of the Kali Yuga, which is like
Oh,
the dark age,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then we began moving up the arc, and then we actually entered the next age during the Renaissance,
Okay.
over 1,000 years later. But that was sort of like the height of the Dark Ages according to the 24,000 year cycle. Be cool to find out when that date was according to his counting.
Unfortunately, I didn't find it. Something about the breaking up of the Roman Empire into East and West Roman Empire happening around that time. That gives me hope to say that, well, that was the bottom of the Dark Age. And so we're technically on the way up. I'm understanding you correctly?
Oh yeah, sure. Like within the in that whole cosmology, there's a 24,000 year cycle with two arcs of 12,000 years downward and then 12,000 years upward. And so, according to most counts, and I follow mostly Sri Yukteswar's, that's where I learned this from. Um, we're in the up, so we're in that 12,000 year up cycle, but we only began that up cycle at around 500 something, um, you know,
Mm,
BCE or however you say it, like 1,500 years ago. And then
okay,
we, within those up cycles, there are different ages. So
right.
using the Greek, there's the Bronze Age, or Iron Age, Silver Age, Golden Age, right? So we're coming from the Iron, and now we're currently in the Bronze, and the next is Silver, and the next is Gold, and it's a good another 10,000 years until we reach the height of the Golden Age. So just imagine the arc of human evolution that we've yet to see, and we're only just getting started. I mean, that's an Aquarius topic we can go on
Sure.
forever. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating stuff. All right. So yeah, the whole movement from 2959 to zero. Oh, just to say, in case anyone's not familiar with who Sri Yukteswar is, he was Yogananda's guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, of course, one of the great saints of the 20th century, both of them. So there's that in case people need to know that. And then the other thing is that 29 degrees of, but a different minute of Capricorn, where the sun was in this cazimi, that happened at other critical points in history. One of them was 1532, which is when Henry VIII was told that you cannot marry that girl, Anne Boleyn. And he's like, thank you for sharing. And he started his own church. This breakdown where the Catholic Church had been so enmeshed in religion and government, where were enmeshed. And of course, there was this big upheaval, this huge paradigm shift that said, okay, there's the end of that. So we see this in the collective, with government systems and all that have been long breaking down. I don't know if you saw this in the news, but there was a woman she was just elected, and she's the youngest MP in New Zealand in 170 years. This is so like Pluto 29 Capricorn. In her inaugural speech the other day, she's Maori, and she gave
Oh,
her speech, and she did a haka. You ever see those people that it's a war cry with the tribes, and usually it's like men, and then and there's ho ho, and their hand movement and their eyes, and there's all this incredible energy transmission. And she gave that, and because she's really standing for resurrecting and preserving the ancient indigenous cultures and languages. This is a
oh,
really big thing about her.
mm.
And so I just thought, wow, that's what a moment, and what that speaks to. Anyway, all right. I want to hear from you. Enough from me.
So it's culminative. It's very much, it's so descriptive. The fact that the sun won't, I mean, Pluto will go back into Capricorn for a little bit later this year. But the fact that Pluto and the sun are joining now, the sun energizes and gives life and creative force. So it's sort of just elicitive of such a sense of completion. Capricorn does induce this deep sense of reflection, contemplation. What am I creating? What am I building? What's going on long term? But when we transition into Aquarius, we don't plan for it. There's no introspection in Aquarius. There's no conditioning. We're not developing habits. We're not disciplining ourselves. Aquarius is the unconditioned. And I think this really highlights for us personally and collectively how there is always going to be a paradigm shift, truly beyond the dualities and the construct we're just so familiar with. Um, any part of our life, you take any category or dimension of our human life, there's the things that we know, the paths that we know. And I think this is highlighting this imminent sense of this is going to have to change. This is definitely going to have to change. And that might be hard. There might be a deep sense of, I don't want it to change. Or, really, especially with Mars right now in Capricorn, there can be the sense of, I failed. I didn't make it work. Or this is not happening the way I wanted to, or the way I thought it should be, or I'm not where I want to be. We fail to recognize that our planning and our efforts to grow and evolve and succeed and make things work are coming from our personal story of how we think things are supposed to go in the first place. It's like, try practicing guitar in a room where there's no acoustics, and the heat's on really high, and you have nowhere to sit. It's just this trying to grow and evolve and develop our creativity, but being very much limited and confined by these boxes that we just assume are a part of the program. So I think Capricorn is saying there's so much more that is Aquarius is saying there's so much more yet to unfold, and you can't understand that because you know not how conditioned you are. So it might feel like we're letting something go, bringing something to an end, and that, and in various ways that can be met with a lot of grief and strife and confusion. And not to say, you mentioned Saturn, and in the rulership that I work with, Saturn's a ruler of Capricorn, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. So they're both activated because we have that transitional point. Saturn's in Pisces, balsamic to Neptune, completing with Neptune. So there's so much ending, there's so much closure over these next couple of years. It's very palpable in the chart, in the transits. So that's a basic reflection on this transition.
I like that. Yeah, Saturn is balsamic to Neptune. So the cazimi opportunity, this reprogramming and realizations, and then how it goes into Aquarius, Now, of course, Pluto is going to be there for the next month. So before we get into all the 12 houses of the zodiac, I just wanted to say that, that critical 0 degree is where it's like the movie trailer. We're going to get a sense of the entire potential of how this can play out, the good, the bad, and the ugly for the next 20 years in this sign. So what would you recommend that we reflect on at that 0 degree?
Hmm. Well, let's note that it's moving the quickest that it moves, right? That joining with the sun is the most charged and active and quick. So Pluto never covers a lot of ground, but when it does cover ground, it'll move through a degree quicker. So it's going to spend maybe a month or so in at 0, but it's moving quickly. So I think you can sort of apply this Leonian energy to it. It's engaged, it's visceral, it's alive, it's just active. It's not like hovering like it does when it stations, right? It's like when it stations, it's brooding. It's like, hmm, let's go here. It's like I'm here and I got things to do, right? So it's more engaging and there's a lot of activity. And of course, it's going to go back to that 0 point 2 more times after this one. So it's initiating something completely new. It's starting us off. It's very clear with the transits that there's a lot of energy, a lot of activity, and a lot of new movement, and it's very, very unclear. I mean, I can't really emphasize enough how those two statements. It's very palpably a new experience, and there can be a sense of terror or fear with that because we're looking at everything we've known and we're so afraid of what might happen. We're so afraid of what's going to go bad, and we could interpret the dream symbols and the archetypes and just kind of say, oh, we just need to make sure we're keeping our mind clear. In terms of like, what is it inviting of us? I don't know. For me, I'm always renewing. I stray for a bit and then come back, as I think we all do, renewing my devotion to what's most important.
Mm,
And Pluto always points to, and this is what we'll look at when we look at it through the houses. This will be fun. Pluto always points to the nature of desire, and we have to understand like Pluto is not just intensity or death or ever. It's like what is this? What does that mean? Like what's that really about? We're always going to face our deepest psychological limitations, where we're holding on because if I let go, I won't have fundamental security. And in that same sense, where we believe I need something, right? There's such a strong craving and aversion quality to Pluto, but underneath that is a greater dimension of our eternal soul power. We're learning to ground ourselves in a power and a security that doesn't come or go. That's what Pluto's all about. But it's all about elimination. Even if we're like, I'm gonna do something new and become an astrologer or quit my job and travel the world. Even there's like this liberating realization of, oh, there's a lot more space in this world for me than I realized. And we kind of break out of the guilt or the shame or the fear of the conditioning from Capricorn. Even so, it's still an elimination process because every experience is going to come and it's going to teach us something, interact with us, and then it's going to go. It's a constant evolutionary process of finding out what's fundamentally inside. So I think renewing and reconnecting with who am I? Like, what am I really all about? Like, what's really true and of essence for me when all that other conditioning and confusion, like, and I'll say this one last point. We all have our vibration. Like, Aquarius is our unique vibration. And accessing that vibration isn't like an intellectual thing. It's not, it's not a thing you figure out or you don't get told by it by someone. It's just your vibration. So it's a matter of not conflicting it, not contradicting your own vibration by adding a whole lot of conditioning to it. So there's something about getting connected to our own vibration and not being afraid of that because it may not be what we thought. Our beingness moving and dancing through this world may not look and the forms may not be what we thought, but this is calling us to just explore it more, trust it more.
nice. Yeah. And the part about, I'm just taking this from Jeffrey Wolf Green's book, Pluto, Evolutionary Journey of the Soul. So if anybody's interested, this is one of the big source code that Ari works with in his Heart and Soul Centered Astrology. But anyway, what I love what Jeff says about this, the polarity point being Leo, the evolutionary intent for Pluto and Aquarius is one wherein the individual must learn how to take charge of his or her own destiny. They
Mhm.
must learn how to implement ideas about themselves, about that which they see as possible for their lives, the goals they want to accomplish, and ideas pertaining to future possibilities. And the other thing I like here is when he says the current evolutionary intent is teaching people to translate their ideas into action by, again, taking charge of their own destiny. This is a very strong point that he makes, and shape it along the lines that these thoughts are suggesting to them. In order to do this, we have to learn to minimize our security needs and patterns of depending on others to tell them what it is, or that it is okay to do whatever it is they want to do.
Right.
So therein lies, like you said earlier, the freedom.
Yeah, yeah. So the attachments of Pluto and Aquarius, we'll see, has a lot to do with peer group. If I am myself, will I belong? Will I fit into my relationship, family, job, community, church, organization, golf club? It's always about the contrast between my vibration and how we suppress it because we don't want to find out that we're different or that we don't belong or things will fall apart. But this is where, with that liberating impulse, when we're not concerned, when we're willing to let go, Pluto, of any external dependency on belonging, on what other people think of us, then we can just be true to and so that's that polarity point. I'm true to my own vibration. I'm proud of what I am. I'm embodying, claiming the uniqueness of my personal beingness instead of just trying to belong or fit into something outside of myself.
Yeah, and I think in finishing up that thought, because I do want to move into the houses, is it's interesting to see that over this course of time in the next 20 years, the whole idea of, Pluto will route out if you're not in the right tribe, if you're not living authentically, it's going to show us that. And it could be that we change tribes, whether that's political tribe or religious or cultural or whatever, spiritual tribe, that it's about, it's the wrecking ball that's going to show us that shadow of where we have not been authentic, and
Mhm.
living that and having our tribe represent and support our uniqueness. That's just what comes up for me. So
That's beautiful. I would even add to that, thinking about, Saturn and Uranus, they're in the last quarter phase. They'll be closing in on each other over the next several years. I would say there's even this dimension of I don't even know what my tribe is anymore, right? Because all of there's this tribe, there's that ideology, there's that political group. It's all getting mixed up. What was liberal might actually be more conservative, and what was conservative might be more liberal, and it's hard to judge what's what or who's who. Um, I think there's a natural mixing up of all of the sects and ideologies and groups that we form that say this is what I stand for. Like that becomes, it's so funny because that becomes its own accidental crystallization, and it becomes Capricorn again.
right,
Capricorn is a master, and it's meant to be about crystallization and structure and
Capricorn.
definition and the rules, because you got to cross the light and make sure you're not going to get hit by a car and all of that, um, and discipline. But Aquarius easily becomes that the moment we say, this is who I define myself by this group. Well, there's no longer any freedom in that. So
Right.
there's that movement right now of maybe people being disorganized and kind of confused and bewildered. It's like, where do I belong and who belongs with me? Because we have to look inside and starting there, not
Yeah.
looking for the right meetup group to join necessarily. Meetup
Right.
group is like very outdated, but you get the idea.
You're right. The cosmic meetup group. Cool. Thank you. That's awesome. Well, okay. Pluto in Aquarius through the houses. First
Do it.
house. Five,
Okay.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Yeah, and let's make this conversational and see what arises. Okay. So I'll
Okay.
give a couple introductory remarks.
Okay.
So like I personally work with a porphyry house system. Others might work with a whole sign. So for those that are doing whole sign, great. You know, this is going to be very direct.
Yeah, we'll make it
Pluto's
easy.
entering an what's that?
Well, makes it easy.
Makes it easy, right? So we got that, but let's say you don't. Let's say you're like myself, and you know you have, let's say, a Capricorn rising,
Mhm.
26 degrees Capricorn rising, but then Pluto is already in your first house, but now it's entering Aquarius. So we're going to be acknowledging um, that transitional energy. Pluto can be in Aquarius in your first house, even if that house, or in any house, even if it's ruled by the prior sign. So I want to say, as a starting point, some of us might actually have houses that begin at 0 Aquarius, you know, except for those who are doing whole sign, all of them do. For most of us in non-whole sign or orientations, Pluto is going to be moving into a sign that starts with Capricorn. Like for me, my fifth house begins at 20 degrees Capricorn. Pluto is still in my fifth house, but moving into Aquarius. So from that perspective, we're looking at a transitional energy. The house itself being defined by Capricorn is going to say this is an area of life that is bringing forth discipline, definition, thoughtfulness. We're growing and developing ourselves over time. That's implicit to whatever is happening with Capricorn, right? But the movement into Aquarius says now we're needing to liberate and break out of the conditioning and the structures that are simply not necessary for truly what we're here to do. So there can be that sense of stress and anxiety. Right? And for everyone, Pluto in Aquarius is coming, objectively speaking, after everyone's Capricorn. So that sense of anxiety, um, I am to look upon whatever house this is with a new lens.
Mm,
I am to look at it not according to what I've known, and it's not negating or denying. I'm not throwing my business out of the window. I'm
right,
still branding and marketing myself Pluto, you know, Capricorn in the fifth, but Aquarius, but there's a new way to do it. There's a way to do it that allows you to embrace the Capricorn discipline dimension and the work you're here to do, but without pushing down and sublimating your individuality. So
right.
there's a looking at it, and I'll give an example for myself just because it's here. So we're gonna start this on the fifth house.
Okay, that's cool.
That's where we're starting because that's where my mind is.
Okay,
Um, it's a circle. So for
exactly.
all of you that are,
Saturn's
it's
in
a
Pisces is nonlinear. It's okay.
we'll have the time
Okay to
signature
start.
too. So um, you know, I have my training program, and it's my fourth year doing this, and all of a sudden, a friend of mine from Israel, Mira, she offered to work with me, and she took my training program landing page and completely upgraded it. And it was an Aquarian experience. Like I couldn't have done what she did. It wasn't within my mind. I didn't have thoughts for it. And at first it was uncomfortable. And then I looked at it, and the more I looked at it, the more I felt, oh, this just clarified everything. You know? So all the things that I've known just got clarified. And so it took me out of the box of the security of how I've presented myself. And it says, what is it like to present yourself, to actualize yourself according to your unique nature? And the teaching that I would offer with Aquarius fifth house is you can't self actualize and look at yourself at the same time. If there's too much self consciousness about it, then there isn't freedom to just experience by the seat of your pants something new that you've never done. Will people like it? Now, this is helpful as I'm saying it out loud. Will people like it? Will they be responsive to it? Am I going to get a, will people follow it? That energy is fundamentally incompatible with the necessary objectivity needed to just create. That experience of creation has to be free and complete and released in each moment. And then the fruits of that will be just experiencing where the next moment takes us and whoever comes and whoever, right? But to be overly concerned with how it looks is to impede upon and suppress the freedom that's needed here. So I would say Aquarius in the fifth house is about freeing one's creative essence and liberating from the old boxes of how I've known myself to actualize and express my own creativity. When we look through this, we have to address the two Pluto dimensions that are necessary. Because what I just spoke about is Pluto, is Aquarius fifth house in general. Pluto is going to point to our deepest fears, our deepest fears, our deepest attachments, what we're afraid of, what we don't want to let go of.
What we don't want to let go of, yeah.
And so this can be a sense of I don't want to make myself different. There can be an understanding this in everyone's chart. I would say look at your natal Uranus and also transiting Uranus to really understand what's that liberation impulse that's really emerging and opening up right now.
Which is really exciting this year because with the
Yeah.
confluence of Jupiter and Uranus, the Uranus being, like Ari was saying, the modern ruler of Aquarius, Saturn is the traditional ruler. But that confluence, it's building already, but we'll really feel it end of March. But April 20th is, it's funny, isn't it fun? 420, the universe has
Oh yeah.
it's a
There you go.
cosmic joke.
At least if you're not living in Australia, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's 421 for them, but yeah.
Oh yeah. So anyway, all right. So that's Aquarius. That's the Aquarian energy in Pluto in the fifth
Yeah,
house.
so the core attachment is I don't want to be different. Fifth house Aquarius Pluto. I don't want to be embarrassed. Everyone's gonna, or I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be an outsider here. I'm gonna be so different, and no one's gonna like me. All of those energetics that correspond to the vulnerability and the fear of really being seen. And so that Pluto Aquarius fifth house is stand in your own vibration, let what comes to come, let what goes go, and just walk that path. See where it takes you.
Yeah, I love it.
Would you
Yeah.
add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm ruminating with this, especially the part about not like your tribe, your tribe will either get you or won't get you. And I think with having Pluto having left Capricorn, we're looking at the structures of our tribe or our family dynamics and our roots, and then rolling over, passing the baton into this conversation. Yeah, I just feel there's a great liberation that's going to be coming, especially I think when Uranus and Taurus, I mean Jupiter and Uranus meet up, this liberating idea about the values that are important to me and how that will impact, fifth house matters, children, creativity, our love and romance, what are we in love with, and on a conceptual basis, not just the people who we love, but what are we having a love affair with? And this is just, I'm just riffing here, but I feel there's a lot of once we get to move through that shadow part and we have this cathartic, it will bring cathartic, often explosive realizations around our mind, about the ways we think, right? Air sign Aquarius. But once we do that, I think there's treasures. Like Pluto is also not just showing the shadow, but the treasures that are available to us underneath once we get past the fear of letting go. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes any sense.
that's great. That brings up for me also the courage to just completely reinvent oneself, do something new.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Radically reinvent, right?
yeah, it's like,
Aquarius
there's this creative calling that I've had, and this is what I want to give my attention to.
outside the
And
box.
it's like, I don't know where it's gonna go. And it's like, yes, you don't know where it's gonna go.
And
Yeah.
there's no rule book or playbook. Like
Yeah,
there,
never with Aquarius. No rule book, none.
no rule book, baby. This art house of yours, and if you're looking at that it could be, if you're using whole sign houses, that would be Libra rising, this conversation. But yes, um very, very powerful. So okay, what about you want to do sixth house? Do you want to
Sure.
do linear now?
Yeah, or we could we
Yeah,
can find an aspect pattern. We can follow the pattern of the septile. um,
right.
okay, so yeah, sixth house.
Okay.
Um, sixth house corresponds to areas of self-improvement. And we're always refining and developing ourselves and cultivating more mastery over whatever we're doing and cultivating and grooming every day, even if it's like doing the dishes. And the issue is that can become a depressing rut of just boredom, busy work, the paperwork, the dishes, the things you do, the body, the task, the chores. Um, Discipline and routine and practice, even spiritual practice, all of that can become too conditioned, where we just sort of feel like internally enslaved. In fact, a lot of souls with Capricorn in the sixth house might have some history in any kind of work or service or actual slavery or enslaved environment, where they have to just continually work hard and maybe developing a lot of strength and skill and capacity, but there's so much harshness and a sense of I'm going to be punished, or I'm not good enough, I have to work harder to be better. All this heaviness. So Pluto in Aquarius comes along and brings up our attachment and our guilt and our shame and our fear and our perfectionism, and says you have to be willing to let go of that and find a new way. There's a better, simpler, clearer, more evolved, and more intelligent way to do your work in the world, to take care of your body, to wash the dishes. You know,
Yeah.
when I was a little boy, and I'm making this up, my father yelled at me and said, "This is how you do the dishes." So we had this ingrained pattern. And whenever I do the dishes, I make sure I do it just right. And then it's like this little inflection, right? Inflection, just to shift our mind a little bit away from that and realize I don't have to do it that way. And suddenly you realize a completely different system that's actually better. It's
Right. And
actually
it's not
easier.
based
It
on
makes more
asking
sense.
the
So it's like, a,
approval of others either. And it's like,
yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't matter whether you like this new way or not. It's me authentically.
yeah. The shift from Capricorn to Aquarius is I don't care what the boss says,
Right.
or that external projection of authority that we're so consumed by. Aquarius
Right.
is
The
always
sixth
going to
house
show
is
higher intelligence. The
go ahead.
intelligence is going to say, when I'm thinking at a higher level of consciousness, I see new possibilities. So whenever we have an Aquarian experience, it's always going to say, when we let go of our Pluto attachment and our fixations, we're going to see possibilities that literally didn't exist in our reality until that moment. So it's new systems, new ways of organizing, new ways of eating and health and diet and practice and just and then, like you were saying before, like we come into tribe, we'll find communities of people that are talking about these systems or these health practices that I'm like, oh my God, this is the thing I want to do and learn and practice. And it just makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting because this house does rule employees, like being an employee or having employees in the workplace, one's daily work, as well as like what Ari was saying about the routine, like washing the dishes. And it's funny because in ancient astrology, they used to say that this house it ruled slavery because, back then people had slaves. So I would say, I would call this is the Emancipation Proclamation
Oh, well said. Beautiful.
where it occurs. Yeah,
Wow. Beautiful.
Emancipation Proclamation. So now if we go to the seventh house, then
Talking about emancipation. Yeah.
yeah, that's juicy.
I don't have to be who I think you think I want me to be. Um, Everything that I've agreed upon, the precedent, the structures of relationship that are conditioned by the gender and social norms, or just like what it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to look. You know what I'm saying? Like all of the conditioning that we're just so familiar with says intimacy and the meeting with another person is just beyond that. Like the present meeting of another is just beyond all of the this is how it should be. So of course there can be many extensions. Capricorn seventh house, Aquarius seventh house can be, let's say you're in an existing partnership, there's a complete radicalization of that partnership where the mind opens to recognize the nature of relationship isn't dependent upon a form. It's dependent upon the mutuality of two souls sharing and meeting and shared agency. And they get to decide and choose what the forms are, but they're not defined by the forms. That again opens up all kinds of possibilities that you can't really see when it's like, I need you to do this for me. I actually had a cool dream where I was told Jason Alexander from Seinfeld
Seinfeld,
was
yeah.
the person in the dream, which is very odd to me.
What does
Um,
he represent for you?
I don't know. I mean, I have to watch some Seinfeld episodes and see what George represents. I mean, he was an interesting guy, but he just says in the dream, um, the most radical form or expression of relationship is one where neither takes responsibility for the other person's feelings.
For the other person's feelings, you said?
Feelings, yeah. And it's kind
Wow.
of the opposite of what we often think. Like, oh, you're having a bad day. What can I do for you, right? And we think if we have to absorb the other person's feelings, or in the general codependency model, um, they're not pleased with me, or I don't. The way they're feeling about what I'm doing is bothering me, and I have to deal with it. It's either a conversation to have, or I have to change myself. But what if I'm not responsible for your feelings, and you can have feelings? Oh, whew.
How liberating would
What?
that be?
How? If we can just do that. So that's freedom, because it says I just respect your journey, and what you're feeling has nothing to do with what we're choosing to create and do. They're two different things that have their own they can be both dealt with and experienced and explored in different ways.
And that's a radical new paradigm being introduced, life-changing for how we relate to others, how
Yeah,
the very nature of relationships and what it means to be in a relationship. It's just
yeah,
all getting so radically upended from the past.
so much so. And it's helpful to appreciate that, like when we look through the houses, there's a natural like aspect pattern in all of these combinations. So Capricorn 7th house is a natural Libra Capricorn square, and that square sort of um, elicits that sense of tension between um, all the things that we've learned about how it's supposed to be in regards to relationships, right? So then Aquarius is a trine. It's saying there's more freedom there. It's more possibility here.
Yeah. Especially, I'm thinking about the Pluto and Libra generation, which is around, what, 1970, was it? 6970?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
early
yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The early
Late 60s, early 80s, I think. Yeah.
early Pluto and Libra, yeah, will be very much impacted. All
Hmm.
right. What about eighth house? Let's,
Okay. Now let's skip the 8th house. Let's not do that today.
oh, okay.
I'm just joking. I'm
You're
just
right.
joking.
Whoa, the eighth house.
Um, there are some people with Aquarius in the 8th house that just need to know, because everything's falling apart right now. Um, so 8th house is the house that corresponds to fundamental permeating change. We get divorced and we get married. What that symbolizes is how we come into relationship with experience in order to osmose from that experience more self-knowledge. We merge and unify with people, place, things, experience, objects, desires, goals, whatever, in order to become someone new on the other end. And the point is becoming someone new. It's DNA, it's transmutational. I do not want to be the same person on the other end of that. And so the issue within the 8th house can be the psychology of entrapment. Entrapment is I have lost my soul to the thing that I've committed to. I have lost my soul to the work or the job or the purpose that I've defined or the relationship. And instead of growing and forming intimacy with my own eternal being, I'm stuck in a dependency on this external object focus. And so it can show up in whatever areas of life this is showing up, but it fundamentally says this is about staying grounded and true to our own vibration, our own essence, regardless of the comings and goings. So what can be happening with this is there can be a strong sense of something being taken away from me right now, right? Or receiving a lot of projections or a perception of persecution or loss, or horrible, difficult endings, strong feelings of victimization. And it's all pointing to where we've invested our own security and belonging in the external world. And relative to Capricorn, perhaps there's a strong sense of um, this is how it is. I'm defined by this.
Right. This is
Let
the
me
way it's
find the
been
right.
done.
This is the way it's been done, and let me find the right word for this. There's an underlying sense of guilt or shame that says, "Well, I fundamentally deserve. Like I can't get what I want anyway, or I deserve this, or it's inherently complex. I have to hold on to my See, Capricorn will keep us in the struggle because of our judgments. You did that to me, and I'm gonna do that to you. You deserve punishment. You took this from me. I agreed, but you betrayed my trust. Like all of these, like deeper, right? Whether it's personal or like in a larger social sense. Aquarius says you can let go of that and let go of the fighting, let go of the judgment, let go of the struggle, let go of all of the tension and the pain, and just be true to who you are. Allow what comes to come and allow what goes to go. Uh, to see, this is a Ramana Maharshi quote, see what remains when we stop interfering with the unfolding. The Capricorn would have us say, but I'm so committed to this person, I can't let them go. Or I work so hard for this business, I can't believe I'm being undermined right now. Or my boss just fired me, I can't. Pluto says that was experience. Now this moment's a new one, and to be able to let go without the guilt or the shame or the holding on or it shouldn't be this way, and to really allow it all to be inside. Okay, all of this anger and fear or judgment or control or feeling really small or sublimated or controlled, all of that is happening inside of myself. I don't need to engage in the world. And so when we free ourselves up from the entanglement, it actually gives us more energy to realize more power, and to say one day, I'm gonna do something completely different. I'm gonna take out a loan and start my own business. Or I'm gonna experience a completely new dimension of freedom in my life that isn't dependent upon the fact of everything changing.
Mm. Yeah, it's a whole new mindset about when I think about eighth house shared resources, when you say about taking out a loan, it can on a mundane level, it can rule, loans, debts, and it's also not just physical debt, but it's like a soul debt of what we owe people or what they owe us. So there's this whole radical reimagining and a whole mindset that is a metamorphosis from deeply, from the inside out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
similar to that seventh house dynamic, it's like we could have a total transformation of existing marriages or relationship structures, where it becomes about a true meeting of souls, like a true intimacy. And there's a willingness to face greater discomfort, right? And that might mean the changing of the form, or it just might mean relationships move to a completely new dimension of intimacy and possibility, because there's more capacity, more space now
North
to
Space.
really be seen, to really let it all go.
Yeah, think about Aquarius being an air sign, and it's so much of it has to do with space and our mind and cultivating like opening our minds and giving ourselves that permission. And like Jeffrey was saying, you don't need the permission of someone else. It's just,
Right.
realizing that. So eighth
And
house is.
another thought that arises on that too, just thinking of the Leo second house polarity.
Mhm.
If you think of just like the idea of deeper spiritual relational practice, and how we kind of we face our attachments and our fears of betrayal, our fears of loss. And Aquarius can be the subconscious memory of being suddenly left behind or being betrayed, being left, right? So it's almost
Abandonment
like
trauma. Yeah.
that exactly, yeah, abandonment trauma. And then being the one who abandons as well because of that protection and fear. That second house Leo is about, I have to keep my heart open and be solid in my own being, because that otherwise I actually recreate that abandonment trauma. Even
Mm.
if it's not happening, the strength of that projection creates it. I experience it. So it's drawing us back to be stable, to love our own life, and not grab on so much. And that's sort of the paradox. That's how we can feel and experience deeper intimacy too.
I love it. Yeah. Eighth house, intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. The shared resources where we merge with the cosmic infinite and where we're afraid to, and what that looks like when we transform that, we go beyond that fear and let go. Just let go. Oh my God, Pluto, please. All right, ninth house. We've
Okay.
got Pluto in the, who's got Pluto in the ninth?
Okay. So ninth house is always going to point to the way in which we're expanding our horizons to realize more of the truth. There's always more to realize. Every experience, if we think of it as a pilgrimage, will give us greater perspective and insight into what this is all about. So there's a calling for a sort of inherent optimism in the ninth house. Capricorn ninth house, you can think of the tradition or traditional spiritual lineage or traditional spiritual practice or philosophy or cosmology. Let's just use the example of a mainstream church. So here's a cosmology. The Bible is the word of God, and here's the rules, and here's what you should believe, and thus what's right and what's wrong. Capricorn, ninth house, these are the things to believe. And then that's always going to have this issue of suppressing our intuition. Our intuition is our non-linear, non-empirical way of just knowing and connecting with the pulse of creation. It's how we sense the movement of the Tao and can understand it and know it without knowing how. We don't find out how to know how, we just practice opening our intuition. And we practice opening our intuition by being authentic, being honest, not getting in the way of our natural connection to the cosmos. And so this Aquarius impulse is pushing up all of the beliefs and the conditioning and the constructs and the assumptions and the philosophies and the isms, and also the alienation that comes as a result of all of that, and saying, break out of that so you can touch base with the truth. And this will both be personal realizations where a person has a moment of realizing, I'm certain, I just know this, I don't know how I know it, I'm certain that my sexuality has nothing to do with how much God loves me. I'm certain that I'm not a sinner. I feel the sense of I'm a sinner, Capricorn, but I think that's all conditioning. Because when I look at it in this moment, I don't find it there. So we just intuit there's something else. And the thing with the ninth house is, Steve Wolfson once said this beautifully, we're always sort of evolving from truth to more truth. So like we're gonna expand upon our existing understanding and add more to it. And so maybe in our existing understanding we formed a lot of conclusions and boxes and kind of closed it. Then we're just going to realize, oh, I had some insight there, but there's more. So let me not get dogmatic about what I think I knew, because there's a lot more. So we liberate and we have that insight. And it could also be that experience of speaking the truth. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to speak my truth. And that's going to make me the fear of Pluto in Aquarius. I might be different. I might be outed. I might not be a part of the church anymore. They might look at me and say, you don't belong here, or they might argue with me. And to just trust one's intuition. And there's a sort of intuitive path that unfolds that you can't chart. Like Aquarius ninth house says, the path before you is an extension of your own individuality, and it's going to unfold inside of you as it seems to be happening outside of you. So just walk the journey, see the friends and the teachers and the experiences that come. It's all a part of the algorithm. And it can feel all new and exciting. And the fear and the attachments could be, I need to explain myself to my people or my family or my church. What if no one understands me? What if I'm wrong? What if I make a mistake? What if I'm leaving everything behind? And that's the sense of anxiety that can be here. And we just got to trust ourselves.
Beautiful. And as you're speaking, what comes up for me is reading in the news how the United Methodist Church has been basically they're not united anymore, and it's the largest congregation in America of the Protestant religion, and it is literally split in half, because one half is saying we have to hang on to the past. Talk about the Capricorn Aquarius archetypes.
Right.
It's just live coverage, perfect example of what you're talking about with ninth house. And then this other half is because they said, no, we have to include LGBTQ people. And that is the where the schism is occurring, is this about sexuality and belief and religion. So this is right, exactly what you're talking about.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because, Lutheranism in general, Protestantism, everything that happened there is like, it's an Aquarius thing at first, right? They're being persecuted. They're the minority, right? And then look at all the mainstream Protestant churches that are incredibly conservative that exist in this world. And so then that has to have its own liberation process. There are always going to be factions within every group that's going to break out. And that's in our own mind too. Like these exist inside of us, so it's like our own conditioning, our own I've decided and determined that I know what it is always going to be challenged by some rebellious inner component of our own psyche. That's just going to be like, no, you're wrong. Do that. No, don't tell me that. You go there. You don't. Who are you anyway? It's always going to happen inside and outside. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that like the back in the day, well, it's actually when Pluto was last in Aquarius, 1532, when Henry VIII was told by the Pope, no, you cannot marry Anne Boleyn, and so he broke off and formed his own church, and that was the huge schism of the Catholic Church. Now it became the Catholic Church and like what became the Anglican or Protestantism, but that rift. So the outsider, right? He becomes the outsider, and isn't it interesting? Like, and there's the shadow Aquarius at play, that these denominations which have evolved over the last, Lutheranism, and follow over all these hundreds of years, have now with the United Methodist Church, the example of being this. Now they're the ones that are cutting off and abandoning, like they were the ones that were the outsiders, and now it's like the coin is flipped. And I just
Also,
think
a
that's
Pluto in Aquarius shadow. It's a really important point
right.
for us to make.
Yeah.
Shadow is, I'm going to fight the man, or I'm going to fight these persecute, right? And then you don't realize, or like, I'm going to fight against these oppressive political forces, and one does not realize that they're becoming an oppressive force themselves.
Right. And
That
yeah,
shadow will
also
then
that,
come back down, and they'll be doing the same exact things and treating other people in the same exact way.
yeah, and also the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition was also another Pluto and Aquarius in the Middle Ages. So
Oh,
do
okay.
you think like we do? Well, if you don't, we're gonna kill you.
Right,
You know,
right,
we're gonna torture
right.
you, kill you. Yeah. And so and even Galileo was they tortured Galileo because he said in the perfect Aquarian fashion, yeah, this paradigm where you think that the sun revolves around the earth. Well, guess what? You're wrong. So, so it's fascinating how the confluence of these archetypes and how they all come together, the light and the shadow.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right,
Cool.
10th house.
All right.
Oh, this is epic, Ari. This is
You
amazing.
have to get a job. Do you
Yeah.
have to do that? Like, who said? What if you
Who
define it?
said?
What does it mean to be a parent? Okay, so Capricorn 10th house is going to be defining oneself according to what is necessarily responsible. What is one's role? How can I participate in a society in a personally meaningful way while also being responsible for myself and contributing to the world in a way that's helpful? There's a sense of ethics and alignment and integrity and responsibility. But that becomes so quickly, I have a responsibility as a man to make sure that I am dot, 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 dot. And then there's also, I can't just leave my job. There's no other job opportunities in the field of the thing that I got the degree in, right? It's like box, box, box. So there's a liberation happening right now where we're learning to face our fear of failure, punishment, judgment. Really, the existential fear with Pluto in the 10th is, I'm gonna be a bad person. I'm not gonna meet my responsibilities. It's all gonna be on me. There can be this like deep sense of like I am a sinner and I've really messed up in a big way, and it, that fear of doing it wrong can keep a person in the same oppressive structures or agreeing to the same patriarchal constructs and conditioning that is absolutely unnecessary. So there's a sense of I I want to become an astrologer. I want to quit my job and I want to just work with animals. Yes, I spent thousands of dollars and I'm still paying it off to get my degree as a lawyer, and it's not what's here. And so to experience one's role in life and the various microcosms of that family, job, society, to experience one's role and purpose and meaningful and responsible contribution beyond the lens of what's conditioned is the
Mhm.
point here. So I don't have to experience something. um I don't have to think of my job and what I'm here to do in the same way. There's another dimension, but do you have more to say to that?
Okay. Oh my God. How do I add to that? I can't. This is your gems of wisdom here. I will sit with for a long time. So yeah, I don't
I'll
know how
add
to add
one
to
more
it.
point then. So
Sure. About 10th house.
we can say in the 10th house, we lose our soul, Pluto in the 10th, to our projection of external judgment. We
Mm,
become this idea of what we're supposed to be, and we can judge others too, because we're keeping this ourselves in jail. We're keeping ourselves in these boxes. Because if I don't fit into these boxes, I'm going to feel shame, fundamental, a deep sense of wrongness within my own being. So we're just liberating from all of that. And it could be also, 10th house, fourth house has a lot about gender. So it can be, there are all these emotional dynamics inside of me that because of society or my job or my roles, I've never been able to explore. So it just opens a door to redefine what it's like to be a human at this day and age. Completely new experience.
mm, yes. And I was thinking the 10th house being about the public eye and the public image. It's like, that the revolution will be televised. People are going to see this transformation. It's going to be very visible
Oh
to
yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely. Yeah,
world. So yes, that's
absolutely.
big. All
Yeah,
right.
and there is also the archetype of just Jeff Green speaks about this in the Uranus book, where there can be an internal liberation that happens without anything showing on the outside. And so this is an important point to make. This
mm,
doesn't all of this stuff doesn't mean things are necessarily changing on the physical level. It might be, and usually it is, especially with strong like Taurus, Uranus stuff going on and Jupiter, it's like likely, but there can be an internal liberation while still seemingly living the outer Saturn world
mm.
and going through the motions in the ways that are relevant for that soul, but internally free. And it's important to recognize that too. Yeah.
Yes, yes, the change on the inside. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think about I remember Eckhart Tolle said once that, there are 1,000, he talked about self-realized beings like Jesus and Buddha and such, and he said that there are thousands and thousands of souls all over the world who are just they're you could say they're saints. They're fully realized, and you wouldn't know it. They're
Wouldn't
just
know it.
simply, they're a carpenter or a plumber, or just something which is, it's not loud out on the stage, and it's just they're doing their thing and they're completely free. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
All right.
think
11th house. Pluto
okay.
in the 11th. Pluto and Aquarius in the 11th house.
So the conditioning with Capricorn in the 11th would be the country club that has its rules. This is how you have to dress, or the political party with its particular ideology and political points. Whatever, there are two dimensions, like whatever community or group we're a part of, there's gonna be its ideas of belonging and what it means to be a part of it. But on a more internal level, 11th house also corresponds to just the archetype of ingenuity and the impulse for liberation. So there's always a way of experiencing and thinking about this human life from a higher dimension of consciousness where we solve the problems of life because we're thinking of them from a higher consciousness. So there's also Capricorn in the 11th, which is the technologies that we're using, the things that have become structured and integrated in society in the status quo, the innovations that I have in my own life, the things that are new and exciting and blossoming. Like everyone's the phone is new technologies. Everyone's got the phone and all these things, and then they become their own Capricorn. And Aquarius wants to look much more holistically. It wants to look at how are these technologies and these ways of living and our mission statement as a community, how is it impacting the larger whole? Because Aquarius, again, if you understand the 11th house Aquarius archetype as there's always a fractal out of the consensus. And even when a change happens amongst a group, within that group, that's going to fractal out into rebellious or liberated outposts. And that's going to keep on going because it's never about staying conditioned. And what happens whenever there's a new form, it's going to innovate and improve upon and evolve out of the existing form. But it's not going to yet be at that point of arrival where it's vibrating with the intelligent design of the entire universe, right? It's like there's so much, it's bigger than we understand. So when we have a new technology or a new political ideology, there's something innovative about it, but something very limiting. And inherently, until it's fully inclusive, it's going to be to some degree exclusive. So there are going to be people that won't be included in that. There are going to be elements of the earth, environments, and subdivisions of society that are going to be, for example, all of the metals that go into this thing right here that we all love so much. And the cars that we're driving now, the electric cars, that causes such immense environmental devastation and social devastation all around the world. It's not the answer. It has an element of improvement. So the Aquarius 11th house says you have to be willing to think outside of the box of the group. Even if it was an innovative and liberating group originally, you have to be willing to liberate yourself from that. And it's going to go as far as we're willing to become an observer and continue to question the conclusions that we keep on making. So some of the fears and the attachments could be, well, I don't want to be an outsider. I don't want to be seen as different. I don't want to be the black sheep, 11th house. There can also be this obsession, which we'll see a lot of, and this can be its own whole conversation. There could be an obsession with technology and how that's going to save everyone's going to have their own AI Google search implanted in their brain, and all knowledge and information and communication can be available. Like all of these things where we see technological innovation as almost becoming its next Tower of Babel, like this, like the apex of human intelligence, how great and important we are. So a thing to look out for would be sort of the breaking down of human arrogance, both the strong fixation on these developments, and where many people will use it for good, many people will use it for bad, serving more humanity, hurting humanity, but also the liberation from that to ultimately realize that this is a metaphor. This whole, I actually really feel that this whole phase of human evolution that we're in right now within the whole Yuga cycle, where we have a lot of devices and technology and we mine for metals, is a very short phase. I think we're going to find there's a wave evolving technologically later in the future where we can do things far beyond what we understand that doesn't involve so much destruction and environmental pain. I think that's the bridge that will take us from where we are to where, galactic beings can travel across galaxies and visit other planets. Like there's more for us to think about, but we're very much limited by the precedent. So the issue with the 12th house Capricorn is it can feel like life is a big jail. We're dealing with all the ways in which time and space is given meaning and purpose and form, and like it has some sort of implicit meaning or purpose, and then we end up getting enslaved by it. So we have the issues of martyrdom, sacrifice, working really hard, giving one's life over to a higher purpose. And that greater question is, what's the meaning of all of this? What is it really for? We can also have the energetics of feeling lost, like there's no guide, there's no guidance in life. I need something to train me, to discipline me. So Capricorn in the 12th really has this quality of learning how to devote time and space to higher purpose. So we're disciplining ourselves with respect to love, to become an instrument. When we move into Aquarius, we're letting go of the time and space component. So we're not, so it's like time and space, 12th house is like the metaphor of being in a spiritual monastery, right? The idea is you're cultivating your spirituality and you're disciplining yourself. You're on a schedule, you're following a routine. You have a practice that you follow. There are rules that you follow so that you're disciplining your mind with respect to spiritual truth. When you move into Aquarius, keep all of that, but just take away the discipline and take away the monastery and take away the form and the structure and the anything. It's just saying that this world is a dream and that all the things that are happening in this world are tarot cards manifesting that seem to be real, but are just reflecting what's happening in the mind. So it's about having a dream and realizing after you have that dream that these are all symbols. So it's liberating from the seeming realness of this. And you can be like, I'm disciplined, I'm working really hard, or I'm stuck, or I'm fighting, or I'm striving with Capricorn. And then in the 12th house Aquarius, you look at that, well, what does that represent? I'm having this experience of feeling stuck or in jail or judged or martyred or lost. If this is all a dream, what tarot card am I picking up right now? What
Mm.
is it reflecting about my own mind? And so there's this possibility of greater forgiveness by forgiving the world of symbols. There can be this obsession, this being said, with crazy conspiracy theories, right? Where we realize that all of these things are we're just being lied to, we're being deceived by the Capricorn powers that be. And what's really going on is this, right? There's like an element of sort of that liberation quality of waking up from the boxes that we thought were real, but then it becomes its own box, where we then say, oh, and it's us versus them, or the green people are really trying to eat us. And so the key is to keep the mind free, and that's forgiveness is essence. It's basically freedom from conditioning, freedom from believing what was never real. And so it's living without a ground, where there's a fundamental trust and peace in the symbology of this world and a turning within for greater liberation. On other levels, this can also say, I want to open up my life and create this utopian dream where we're all living in a way that reflects this greater 12th house ideal of purity and peace and forgiveness, because I realize I can make the stream whatever I want it to be. So there can also be a lot of deep awakenings around manifestation and working with thought and clarity of thought in this signature as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think too about Aquarius being so future oriented. And to me, it speaks to this, the future self coming from the future into the now, if you wanted to put it that way, and reimagining. And in that process, it's that liberation that comes in those realizations, in the 12th house being this place of solitude where we get to reinvent ourselves deeply from the within to the without, but letting go of this kind of, I could say, even linear progression of some improvement, but this radical shift where improvement and change comes from the future into the now. It's just what comes up for me.
Yeah.
Hey, first house.
Right.
Moving right along. Pluto in the
So
first house.
this is obviously initiating an entirely new cycle. And it says there are actions to take, there's a path to walk, there's a calling for self-leadership and self-trust here in order to initiate an entirely new cycle. The issue will be Capricorn first house. Let's say we're just coming from that precedent, or in general, Capricorn, I know what I know and I've done what I've done. And I need to be willing to respond and act in new ways. If you give the analogy of Pluto in Capricorn in the first being an
Hold
entrepreneur.
on just a second.
Yeah,
I have to get him out of here. I'm sorry.
sure, sure.
I apologize. I have to pause the recording. All right.
Okay, so if we think about Pluto in Capricorn in the first as an entrepreneur, you're working very hard, initiating a new cycle, putting a lot of energy, a lot of gusto into your path. You create your own conditioning over time that says, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is where it's going. Aquarius wants to shatter all of that. The key phrase here is I need to be free enough to know my own capacity for new choices. Because what I'm here to do and my own purpose, my own path in life cannot be defined by the precedent and what I've done and what I've known. So it doesn't even matter if there's been a lot of success or failure prior to this point. Pluto in Aquarius in the first house says there's a calling to experience something new, to access impulses that you may have not known. If there's been a sense of disempowerment, meaning I can't make choices, I don't feel powerful enough, I can't change the conditions of my life, I am not connected with my own agency, I just have to go with the flow. That could be, Pluto in the first can be either really harsh or disempowered and not really connected to that, right? It's a basic victim victimizer situation. Same thing with the eighth house too. So we can have that energetic if a soul has not been connected to their own will or their own no or their own yes. Aquarius is this crazily huge shattering impulse within that can feel incredibly anxious because it's sort of like a thunderstorm with a lot of first house energy happening inside. And if we're still suppressing that because, oh, I don't want to be angry, or I don't want to make too many changes, I don't want to shock people, then the likelihood of there being sudden shocks in our life or us suddenly flipping out gets stronger. So the key is to embrace the calling of our own soul individuality to become and to move. Jeff Green speaks about Uranus in the first as beating to the beat of your drumming, marching to the beat of
The
your own
beat
drum.
of your own drummer.
You're doing what you're doing. You're not looking at what other people are doing, and you have to just have confidence and trust in that. There can be a very erratic quality to it, and that erratic quality can create its own trauma if it's reactive. Right? If
Mm,
I've been so suppressed, and I'm like, I'm gonna leave or do my own thing, or gosh darn it, and you throw the computer out of the window, you're gonna get billed for that window. And that's gonna be a setback. You might get sued. So there's
mm,
a way to liberate, create, embrace your own freedom without being a rebel without a cause.
yeah, it's a rebel with the cause, and it's in the cause of humanity. You are yourself, but it's in the context of what is good for humanity. I would think too, that whole polarity between self and others.
Yeah, well, in the first house, there's a greater intelligence with Aquarius, and it's gonna consider more possibilities, but it is very much about me. And that seventh house Leo makes sure you're keeping your heart open, that you're not being arrogant or aloof or just dismissing people.
Mm,
Um, the the fear with Pluto here could be, I'm afraid of making this choice. What if I don't make it? What if this is short lived? What if I get hurt? What are the consequences? And so there's actually a strong invitation not to just be instinctive about these things. And there's a difference in this signature between being reactive and just acting upon our instincts. And we can say, oh, I had a strong feeling about this and I should just do this, versus getting quiet and becoming an observer and just seeing what the calling is that's calling us. So we follow it and we move with it. And that can be scary and insecure, but we can just go with it and not think about it because we're trusting it. And that's archetypally very different than a more reactive, impulsive way of being. Aquarius never wants to act impulsively, and that's different than being free and unconditioned.
mm, right. The whole notion of the rational mind, rational or ordered science, scientific, Aquarian scientific detachment.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Mm, all right.
Um,
Second
Actually,
house.
it brings up
Second
the
house.
analogy, if you think of first house Capricorn as like an army general, right? And you're planning your war, right? You're executing your actions. Aquarius is going to climb a mountain. And before you make that next command, you're going to see the whole playing field a lot more broadly. So we see
Mm,
more of the picture, and that frees up more options and choices that we couldn't otherwise see when we're lower down.
yeah,
Okay,
good point. Thank you. The big
Pluto and Aquarius in the second house. This is fundamentally about deconditioning from all the ways in which I'm supposed to live. So we think it's a funny thing, and this is very much a Capricorn. Capricorn embodies just the general cultural, social assumptions that we're all conditioned by. And they're questioned and they transform slowly in time, but they're always there. To live here, I have to earn a living. Crazy thought. I mean, we don't think about that enough. To earn a living qualifies my deserving and my capacity even to live. So we're very removed from sort of the inherent nature of survival. And it also means we've made survival a very personal solo thing. I got to do something to earn my living, or for my family, right? Or for my tribe, right? But the at best, or for my church or whatever, we don't recognize that all resources are a part of a greater ecosystem. And survival implies resources. Like everything that we survive upon is a resource that comes from the earth. It's like simple as that. And we just need to think differently and more creatively about it. What would it be like for more people, two dimensions, more people to come together and say, hey, uh, we have kids, you need housing, we need to make some food, let's pull together and get some land. And when we come together and we think in collectiveness, survival is enhanced. But there can also be this deep sense of I'm alone, my job isn't working out, or I don't have the money that I need, and I'm deeply isolated. Aquarius second house can be the apex of isolation. I'm a
Mm.
hermit alone in my own world, and I don't have any friends. I don't have any community connection. That's one extreme, right? The key with Aquarius in the second house is to free the mind from the boxes, and there can be that sense of, well, I have to isolate myself because my survival is threatened otherwise. If I'm a part of society, or if I share or relate to other people, I'm going to be threatened in some way. Any Aquarius signature can be a trauma signature. And there could be with Aquarius in the second house this strong sense of, I gotta isolate and protect myself because of that subconscious Uranian memory. In a past life,
Mhm.
I was living on a land, and the entire land was, dehydrated by the fires that the neighboring, warlords affected, and my whole community died of starvation. So we free ourselves from the fear of not having enough, from the fear of scarcity, and we get out of isolation, either overtly or just simply in the energetic of, I'm willing to think more broadly and recognize I can have what I need by bringing forth more of my essence. That Leo eighth house is essential because it says if you stay in isolation and you don't give of yourself, share your heart, share your beauty, share your creative essence, if you don't put efforts towards giving, you're not going to attract and come into resonance with other people. You're not going to be you're not going to allow for resources to come to you, for community to come together where sharing and collaboration can happen in ways beyond what you could imagine. It's an ecosystem. You plant a bunch of seeds in your second house garden, and more seeds come, and an ecosystem and a forest grows. And you couldn't create the forest, but you had to be a part of it. You had to participate. So the attachments can be the attachments to a fear of survival. I don't want to let go. I don't want to share. I don't want to connect. Or just this strong sense of, I don't want to leave the known because if I do, I'm going to be insecure and I'm not going to have what I need. So there's a calling to think more intelligently about survival and to expand it to the collective. When we think collectively, when I think about my survival as a part of the larger ecosystem of life, what happens?
Mm. Great, awesome. Okay, we got two more houses, third and fourth. We're
Okay.
almost done. You're on a
Which one's
roll.
your, which one's yours? Which house is yours?
Well, we did mine was fifth, so we did that
Oh,
one.
yours as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we both have a Virgo ascendant
Actually, I
or
have Libra
Libra?
because I use a
Libra
host
ascendant. Yeah.
houses. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. All right.
Third house, Pluto.
You call a tree enough times that when you look at it, you're not seeing what it is, you're seeing a concept that you've established in your mind. You read an astrology book and you hear a Pluto means transmutation, and you look at a chart and you just say some words that, oh, Pluto is in your third house, or you're going to be, really transforming the way you learn, or maybe you're going to start studying psychology. And it gets to a point where our mental associations form logical frameworks in our mind that aren't very deep. They're just conditioned patterns. They're the thoughts that we've said. They're the vocabulary words that we Capricorn memorized in school to pass the test, right? It's what was acceptable in the community because these are the words that everyone speaks. The words that we use to describe things on some level also reflects the openness and the curiosity of the mind to actually find out what things are. We always ask questions, and the questions elicit new data. It's like the openness of the mind is what creates the possibility of learning to happen in the first place. Most of us, most of the time, walk through life with our. This is why I say, for my training program, it's open to new students and advanced practitioners. I find the new students have an easier time learning because I'm teaching a particular paradigm that's about the soul's evolutionary journey. And so we have a lot of concepts and words that we've just learned. And I'm really inviting people to look at things according to what they are. Like, look at it with a fresh mind. What is its evolutionary nature? What's its archetypal essence?
Mm.
Beyond all of the conditions and associations that we're familiar with. So the tree is not a tree, that's a word. It's so much more. And we inhibit the mind's curiosity and possibility of learning. So you look through the telescope and you look out at the stars. If the mind says, I've seen everything there is, you're not going to discover a new asteroid. I'm really into binary star theory. I personally believe that we're a part of a binary star system. Video on that with Walter Cruttendam on my channel. But there are so many scientists that are just collecting data, reworking the same lunar solely theory for why the Earth apparently, according to them, wobbles on its axis.
Mhm.
Even though the logic doesn't make sense, we don't want to break down the constructs that we've already established. I was thinking earlier, logic doesn't necessarily mean sane. And all kinds of things from a Capricorn third house point of view have been written as law and believed, and also like what you're allowed to say, how you're allowed to express yourself, the beliefs and the words and the education that's okay. All of it can be absolutely absurd. And so Aquarius wants to open up the mind, be available to shatter your existing logical conclusions with new data, which means look from a higher lens, right? Broaden your telescope view, climb a higher mountain. The more we objectify our reality, the more we see everything from a bird's eye view. And so we see all of the movement in the systems and we realize, oh, there are larger cycles at play here.
Part of a larger whole. Yeah.
It's so this is a fun astrological thought. The way that I talk about progressions, like secondary progressions,
Hmm.
which is just, it's like a way of taking a chart and one day of transits equals 1 year of progression. So your 7th day of life equals your 7th year of progression, things like that.
Hmm.
It's like a tree falling. It's like progressions will slow down that tree X times whatever. And so what was just a falling, and we say a tree fell, when you slow it down, which is another way of saying when the mind that's observing it gets quieter and slows down and goes beyond linear time, and you watch something happening seemingly not falling down in 5 seconds, but falling down in 5 years. There's so much more nuance that you can map and observe and talk about. It's the size scale and the time scale within which we're looking at things that
Hmm.
then defines the extent to which we're able to describe its parameters and its nature. So we're always wanting to broaden and see from a higher dimension to grasp more of the picture. And that's true with everything in our life. So this is opening the mind. So the
Mm.
fear, the attachments are to the known. These are the socially acceptable thoughts and logical conclusions and ideas, or I've written my book about this, or I've taught these things, or I've been speaking these words. Even socially, I don't want to be disagreeable. We say, how you doing? Oh, da 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 da. We have these ways of being, but what if we're just actually looking at what is and using words to describe actual experience? There can be a lot of fear of not being able to relate socially, or I can't talk to anyone, right? It's like people are just talking on these concepts and ideas. What is it like to be true and free in your own mind and not be afraid of that?
Right. The fear of being misunderstood or not understood or
Oh, yeah, that's right.
being beyond that.
Yep. And that can be a big piece also with the ninth house as well.
Mhm. Yeah, polarity. All right, fourth house.
Okay.
Final house, the fourth, the angular
My
fourth,
apologies
the
to
root.
those from the 12th to 4th. We've kind of gone through these a little more quickly, but it is what it is.
It's still rich.
Okay. Um,
Pluto.
4th house pertains to bonding, emotional security, connection. our energetic sense of home, where we feel rooted and grounded and safe and secure. It's our nurturing imprinting. Capricorn nurturing imprinting says there needs to be some level of continuity and security and ground and reliability there. But there can also be a lot of judgment. Don't cry, right? Or men don't hold hands with each other. All these things, or women should act this way, right? All these things that actually get in the way of our emotional discharge, which is really the thing we have to go through in order to feel fundamentally safe, right? A baby has to cry, or a toddler has to feel hurt and just express their emotion, and then they're done. When that's suppressed, we then freeze up and like, oh, I can't express that. I can't feel that. I can't have these feelings, right? I can't express this emotion. So fourth house Aquarius here is freeing up the emotional body. Whatever suppressed trauma or fracturing, emotional fracturing, or a sense of I'm not being cared for, I don't belong, or I don't feel safe, whatever that is, that can manifest as projection, which comes through in relationship, where suddenly we're afraid of, being left alone, or we don't want anyone to touch us. These things that we don't understand why that's there, and just latent trauma within our own individuated unconscious. This wants to break through that. And so this is about real penetrating deep intimacy with our own inner reality, being able to access and open up anything that's become frozen. And of course, it's how can I do that if I'm not certain that I'm going to be cared for or protected? And it's about realizing I am grounded and secured and sourced within my own self. And then I get to then attract tribe and people into my life that become my family. And so whether that's an existing family or just friendships, there's a way of human beings being there for one another, caring for one another in a way that says, I'm here with you. I can nurture and care for you and hold you and be with you and hold space. That's the paradox of the fourth house. It is about learning how to nurture and care for ourselves and others as we grow. But also as we grow, we need to be cared for as well. So if there is some sort of lacking in that in our upbringing, which to some extent all of us have that, there's a need to almost learn how to reparent ourselves. And that often will then take us back into, how do I let people in, or how do I allow myself to be supported? What kind of care do I need? How do I create a home experience for myself that's nurturing and caring? What are the boundaries that I need to create to support that? I think this can really highlight a sense of alienation or different. Like, I don't really relate to my family or my home or where I come from, or I've been trying to be belonged. I've been trying to belong and fit in to these paradigms, and
Yeah,
I
who we
can't. I'm not
called
being.
family, it's a whole
Yeah.
new definition of family, of what
Yep.
family is.
Exactly. And we could even realize, instead of trying to, be understood or loved or accepted for who I am, I get to love and accept and understand my own self. And I've seen this a lot with strong Aquarius fourth house stuff. It's like at a certain point, emotional memories can re-emerge, positive or negative, that really relates to whatever's beginning to awaken or blossom within the soul. And as that re-emerges, that needs a space, right? Because again, the fourth house, it's a womb. We need to be in a container of knowing ourselves to be safe. And if there's too much that emerges too quickly, that can actually feel very threatening to our ego structure. Like, oh, what do I do with all of this, right? So there are all these really neat modalities. One is like womb surround, like where all these people touch one person, or co-counseling, where you can work with a total stranger and you're just held in a container to emotionally discharge. And I think of that where there can be an impersonal sense of nurturing, where you're being cared for and supported to just free up your emotional body. And that's the point. When we free up our emotional body, we can see clearly. We're not stuck or limited or defined by the projections of, am I safe? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I accepted here? We can feel whole within ourselves.
Beautiful. Wow, thank you so much. This has been
Yeah.
awesome. You're so generous to give us these really rich delineations.
Well, I'm so grateful for the
Very
opportunity.
grateful.
I was thinking earlier today, oh, we should do that,
Yeah,
because I would probably not motivate myself. I would be too Virgo about it. I would be too meticulous and I would prepare too much. So just getting to do this with you allowed me to just,
riff,
I
riff, riff.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Dang, you're a great
In
river.
relational space, there's something that comes out a lot more easily for me, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's like it's just completely channeled. That's my experience of you. It's just how divinely you're such a beautiful channel for that, for all that wisdom, your higher self and source, and it just flows. I don't want to get in the way. I'm like, wind him up and let step back, man. I just it's just so awesome. So I'm very, very grateful. If anyone is interested in Ari's programs, arimoshe.com, arimoshe.com, and the link is below. Yes, and you're going to France. Have fun in France. Oh my God,
Yeah,
how
we're gonna be anyone who's in France or wants to visit us, the first weekend of France, we're gonna be teaching in Paris and then doing a family Magdalene retreat, which you can learn more about, get in touch with us. But yeah, I think it's on the 3rd, we're gonna be doing a little Pluto workshop.
a little Pluto workshop. There are no such things as little Pluto workshops. No,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
but that's okay. It motivates us to get there, and then we go deep into the rabbit hole. We love hearing from you, so your comments are appreciated. We read everything. Please do feel free and to like, share, subscribe. We're very grateful. This has been Star Sound Speaks and Ari Moshe Wolf. See you next time. Namaste.